Hello guys, welcome to another video. In this video we'll be covering a practical programming test from uh 2011. So this was a test two. Alright, so I'm just gonna read out the test and then we'll start programming, okay? So the linear distance d between 2 points x1, y1 and x2, y2 on a two-dimensional plane is given by d is equals to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Right, you are required to write a computer program in C++ that reads in a list of x, y coordinates from a text file and determines the total linear distance between all points and the linear distance between the first and last point. The program must comply with the following specifications and requirements. So refer to the examples below for more clarity. Right, a file named input.txt will contain the x, y coordinates. Each line of the file will contain an x and y value. The total number of lines is unspecified. You may assume that all numbers in input.txt are correctly formed and that there is no invalid data such as text. Your program must generate a file called output.txt. The first line of this file must contain the total linear distance between all points. The second line must contain the linear distance between the first and last point. Your program must run without any console input from the user and must not produce any console output. Okay, so in this paper there was no encryption or use of strings, but this was a request from one of the viewers, so I'll be doing this code really quick, and then uh, the next videos will probably have encryption in them. Okay. All right. So we need to somehow take in. Okay, let's look at example one. So we need to take in how many? 5 sets of coordinates, and then produce. So the first output that we get needs to be the distance, the total linear distance, right, between each point, added up. And then the second result we need to produce is the distance between the first and last points, okay? And then we have 3 examples to test our code with, okay? Uh, all right, so let's start coding. This one is pretty straightforward, right? It's just a basic formula that you are putting in. So there was someone I was helping during the project, and for some reason he was not using namespace standard. So I just want to explain what this actually does. So using namespace allows you to uh, it allows you to like not have to uh, like or say you don't have to keep writing std before you put in some function that you want to use. For example, cout or standard end line. So using namespace standard, since we're going to be using the standard library, right, in C++, uh, and uh, so using namespace allows std, uh, never mind. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is instead of writing standard in every line of code that you're going to write whenever you use something from the standard library, just write this line using namespace std, and it'll save you time and avoid unnecessary errors. Okay, so we're going to be uh, getting some data from input.txt. So I'm going to use this fstream library. Okay, so first thing I want to do is uh, make sure I'm actually getting the right stuff into my code. So I mean from the input.txt file. All right, so in this line, creating a variable called infile of type ifstream. So this will allow us to read and pass data through from the text file into our program. And so use the variable, or you can call it the object as well, and use the open command, and then you put in the file name, okay? Because when I was trying to help some people with the project, they could not do this. Like this was something they couldn't do. So it's very important. All right, next step. Since I would be bringing in two sets of coordinates, right? What I want to do is create two variables. And if you look back at, okay, if you look back here, example one has integers, example two has floats, and example three has doubles, okay? So in order to allow um flexibility in terms of uh, numbers coming in, I won't use int and I won't use floats. What I'll use is variables of type double, okay? So I'll have double, right? And I'm going to have x1. Oh, okay. I want to show you how to initialize and declare multiple variables on one line, okay? So this is how you do it. So if you want x1 to have the value 0 initially, then you can put it in brackets there. Alright, but this notation works best if you're declaring multiple doubles on one line. So since we'll be calculating distance between x1 and x2 and y1 and y2, I want to make those variables. Okay. I'm then gonna have uh, another variable called difference, and also set it to 0, and that will account for the linear distance between the 2 points. Oh, I should name it distance, not difference. Distance. Cool. All right. So another thing you need to know by this stage is whenever you are reading in a number of lines that are unspecified, right? As it said in the brief, unspecified number of lines. So there could be 5 lines or 1,000 lines of data that you're reading in. So it's best to use a while loop. Remember, we use while loops when we want the code to run at least once. Oh no, not even once. We want the code to run until a condition is met, right? So it's not like a for loop where you know the beginning and end. You don't know the beginning and end of a while loop, right? So another thing is when you want to get data from your input text file, you need to call the object, right, which is in file, and then use these greater than signs. I call them that. I know there's an official coding name for them, but I call them that. And then the the variables you're using to store the data in. So in this case, what am I taking in? I'm taking in x1 and then y1, right? Just want to show you x1, y1 right there. So 0, 0 would go in, okay? And then 1, 0, and then 1, 1, then 0, 1, then 0, 0. Okay. So once that comes in, I just wanna see out to ensure that I'm actually getting the correct uh, data values coming into my variables. And the line, I just want to leave a space in between, right? So it's clear. Okay, then you don't have to put this, but I just like putting it. Your I think your IDE will automatically do this for you. Right, so I'm running the code. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't put in the stuff into my file. Alright, so we had 0, 0. Sorry, I didn't create my input file. I just want to do that quickly. So 0, 0, and then 1, 0, then 1, 1, then 0, 1, then 0, 0. Okay, and I saved it. Okay. Okay, let me just run this again. Alright, so here we go. So 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. Okay, so we are calculating the distance, and there's a formula for that. So in this, in the question paper, it didn't mention anything about not using special functions. So I'm going to use CMath, so I can use square root and power functions in order to deal with this. Okay, so next thing is what are we actually going to make this code? Okay, so if you look, let's see what needs to be stored, right? So in order for us to calculate the first thing, which is the distance between the current point and the previous point, right? So you take in two coordinates and the next two, and then you subtract them, right? And you get that value, and then you add it to the next line, the difference between those two and those two and those two. Okay. So I'm going to try and do this code without using some form of storage. So, well, let's use storage, right? I think it would be easier that way. So we can create what is it? An array. I don't like that because we have an unspecified size. All right. Let's not use any storage like an array or something. Let's just go straight. Okay, so yeah, I created these doubles, okay? And then I'm gonna create another pair of doubles and I'll just call them X and Y, okay? And let me set them to 0 as well. Okay, so I want to use X and Y to read in data, okay? And then uh, So above that, since I know every time I run this, oh no, it's not gonna work. Alright, it is. So every time I run this code with a text file, right, the first line will have my x1 and y1 in it, okay? And the reason why I want to store that is that I'm going to be subtracting the last, I'm going to be using it in a calculation to determine the distance between the first point and the last point, okay? So that's why I'm doing this line outside this while loop. So you open the text file, then you read in the first line, right? It gets stored there. And then in this while loop, it then takes it from the second line, okay? And then puts that in this. But then, yeah, okay. I can't use x1 and y1 anymore. So let me just show you that it takes it from the second line. So you see the second coordinate is 1 and 0, and then so on. So the 0 and 0 shouldn't be displayed when I run this code. Yeah, so 0, 0 is not shown there because it's stored here and I'm not displaying x1 and y1. Okay, let's use our distance formula. So distance, right, will equals to square root of square root of x2 minus x1, right, squared. That's where the power comes in. And then plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, so what this formula is the distance formula they gave, right? So I take the square root, which encompasses everything in the formula in terms of the variables, right? So this is how I use a power function, and this first bracket represents what I want to square. I mean, what I want to raise to the power, and this is the power I'm raising this to. So I'm using 2 because it's squared, okay? And I'm performing this x2 minus x1 here before I square, okay? Same here, that's why I put it in brackets. So I'm performing the y2 minus y1 before I square. And then I take the square root of that entire thing. Cool. So before I can actually do the calculation, I need to get two sets of variables, which is in the first case would be x1 and y1, and then x2 and y2. So I need some sort of I need a piece of code where I store two sets of variables and then take in the next one. Okay. Okay. I'm just thinking. Uh, so in the first case, I took in this, okay, and I stored it there. Let's make this x naught. So I'm gonna make more variables because I need them. x naught, which I'll set to 0, and y naught, which I set to 0. So instead of using x1, y1, I'll use x naught, y naught, and then I take in to x and y, and then I'll say that for the first case, x1 will equal to x naught, and y1 will equals to y naught. Okay, and that will only be for the first case, right? So then we have x1 and y1, but we need x2 and y2. Remember, the first time this runs, it gives us the first set of coordinates which we're passing to x1 and y1, right? So we have that. And then when this while loop executes, it takes in the next set of values, right? So at this point, I'm going to say x is going to equals to x2 and y will equals to y2, okay? So why I did that is because this line gets the first set of variables. I pass it through to x naught, y naught. So in the first case, remember that 0, 0, and then 0, so x1 gets set to 0, and y1 gets set to 0. And then the next set of coordinates that come in is 1 and 0, right? So x will hold 1, and y will hold 0, and then I say, oh, I wrote this wrong. So it has to be x2 will equals to, at this point it's 1, right? And then y2 will equals to y, and y at this point, remember it's 0 there. And then I perform this calculation, right? The answer gets stored in distance, okay? And then what's the next step after that? So let's say, okay, we got the distance for the first two coordinates, right? Now I need to do 1, 1 and 1, 0. So I have 1, 0 saved in the x2 and y2, right? But I'm going to transfer it to x1, right? So I'm kind of like making the next, the previous x2 become the new x1, and the previous y2 will become y1. That's what that piece of code means. So I calculate the distance from the first set of coordinates, and then now the while loop gets to this point, and it's like, okay, 1, 1, 1. So, all right, before it gets there, we still here. Okay, so we took in first set of coordinates 0, 0. So 0, 0, x1, y1, 0, 0. Then x2 and y2 take in 1, 0, right? So it calculates the distance, it gets a value, I'm assuming 1, and then you then say x1 is equals to x2. That means that now x1 would be 1 and y1 would be 0, okay? And then the loop goes back to the top, and then it takes 1, 1. So x takes the value 1 and y gets the value 1, right? It goes to the next line in your text file. And then x2 will have the value 1 and y2 will have the value 1. And remember, your x1 and y1 have the value for the previous set of coordinates. And then calculates distance again, and so on and so on. Okay. Remember, now we want the total distance, right? So we need to add the previous distance. So it's going to be, distance is going to equals to distance plus square root. So it's important in the beginning that you set it to 0, otherwise it will have some value that you don't want to use, right? So initializing is key here for the sake of this loop. Okay, so after the loop is done, remember now x1 and y1 will have the last two sets of coordinates, which are 0, 0. And then what you want to do is say you want to calculate the distance again between the first and last coordinates. Remember the first set we saved it in what? X0 and Y0. So let's do that calculation. Make another variable in the same line. Distance. I'm gonna call it the distance. Okay, I'll call it D for distance, and I'll put F for first and L for last. Okay, I know it's not the best of names, but I'll just use it. So my distance between first and last will equals to the formula that we used, but instead of using x1 and y1, we're going to use x naught and y naught, because x2 will hold the last set of coordinates and x naught holds the first. Y naught holds the last y coordinate, and then y naught holds the first. Excuse me. And then after that's done, you want to first see out before we take to our output file, right? To not waste too much time during the test. Okay, let's see if this code works. Yes, it does. Okay. The format for your output needs to be this, right? So it needs to be distance. Let me just show it to you. So it needs to be. Can you see example 1 on the right? It's first total linear distance, and on the next line it has distance between the first and last point. Okay. So it needs to be this format, like that. Cool. So I'm just gonna try it with the second examples. Oh, yeah, the second examples data values. So we have 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. Wait, am I lost? Yes, I am. So what is it? 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1.5, 1.52, 1.5, 2.0, and then 1.0, 1.5, and then 1.5, 1.0, and then 1.5, 2.0, and then 2.0, 1.0, and then 2.0, 2.0. Let me just make sure it's correct. So all ones on the left. I mean 1.5, 1, then 1.5, 1.5, and 2.0 correct, and then 1, 2, 1.5, 2, 1.5, 1, 212, correct. Okay, let me just save that. Okay, so I'm just going to run it for the second piece of code. The second example. Just check if it's correct. Okay, so 673,935 1.41421. Yes, okay, so that's what we get. And then let's just test it for the third one. Just to make sure. Although the third one's a bit long to write out. 10.00. How many zeros is that? 5. Then you have 0.5 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you have 9.51057. And you have 3. Where am I? 3.09017. 8.09017. 5.87785. 5.87785. And 8.09017. And 3. Yeah. I don't even feel like writing this out. But let's just